This map tracks a vector line descending from the highlands of Canaan into the borders of ancient Egypt. In 1721 BC, a young man named Joseph was forced along this route by human traffickers. He had reached the absolute floor of his society. Stripped of his family and his identity, he was sold as property to Potiphar, an elite Egyptian officer and captain of the guard. Yet, in Genesis chapter 39, the text presents a direct contradiction. It looks at this enslaved, trafficked teenager and calls him a prosperous man. This friction in the narrative suggests the author is doing more than documenting a biography. They are intentionally detaching the definition of success from a person's physical circumstances. Resolving the tension of the prosperous slave requires an understanding of an ancient biblical literary framework known as typology. Typology is a structural device where the life of an earlier historical figure acts as an architectural shadow, projecting a specific pattern that will be filled by a later, ultimate figure. In this framework, Joseph's experiences in Egypt serve as the structural foundation for the story of Christ. By identifying this pattern, we can see how the text measures power and divine intervention through a lens that ignores traditional social status. Despite being an enslaved foreigner, Joseph wields an unexplainable amount of influence over this sprawling Egyptian estate. Potiphar makes an observation from a purely secular perspective. He sees that an unseen divine force is causing Joseph's work to thrive. The trust grows so high that Potiphar places every asset in the household under Joseph's control. The only thing he keeps for himself is the bread he eats. The narrative then reverses through three rapid phases: a localized temptation to sin, Joseph's absolute resistance, and a resulting false accusation from Potiphar's wife. Joseph is immediately thrown into prison, losing every bit of the earthly authority he had managed to acquire. This sequence, elevation followed by catastrophic unjust punishment, provides the specific data points needed to build the typological connection. We can now map Joseph's life on the left against the later narrative of Christ on the right. The first parallel is the form of a servant. Both figures are stripped of their favored status and reduced to a state of total servitude. Then we see divine presence. In both cases, secular authorities are forced to acknowledge that God is operating through their work. This is followed by temptation and accusation. Both figures overcome intense trials, only to be bound and falsely accused by those around them. Finally, we reach ultimate authority. Even while physically bound and imprisoned, both figures are described as having all things committed to their hands. Genesis 39 functions as a structural map, where the raw material of historical suffering is used to build a recurring prophetic pattern. Most modern definitions of prosperity require wealth and physical freedom. Joseph, by contrast, is sitting in a dungeon. This image captures the objective reality of the text. Based on the evidence in Genesis 39, the narrative is proposing a different standard for success. Prosperity here is identified as the active presence of the divine within a prison cell or a slave market. It is a state of being that persists even when freedom is taken away. This ancient story suggests that the ultimate victor is not necessarily the one sitting on the throne, but rather the servant in the prison who quietly holds the entire weight of the world in his hands.